Hi, I am so excited. We are speaking to our youngest entrepreneur yet, Duncan Rutherford. Duncan, hi, how are you doing?
How are you today? I'm doing well.
I'm great. I am so excited to speak to you because you really are entering some traditional industries and shaking it up. But before we hear about that, I'd like to just hear a little bit more about you. How did you get to where you are today?
So as Meagan said, my name's Duncan Rutherford, and I have just graduated from James Madison University with a finance degree. These traditional industries, whether that's real estate, just from a young age, I've always been really passionate about the industry. It's the investments of my parents and the cash flows of their real estate investments that has enabled me to, put me through college and have the life I've had. So just from a very young age, I've been exposed to the right real estate. And for those reasons, I thought I'd want to break into the industry.
So now real estate is an entrepreneurial industry. I mean, you're a business of one. How has that worked? As someone, you shared you're 22 years old. How has that worked out for you?
I would say it's worked out pretty well so far. I've only been in the industry since about 2019, so it's been about 2 years now. And I wouldn't say I've had a breakout career yet. But that said, it's really hard to have a client trust someone who's 22, just out of college, with like the largest financial transaction of their life. Mm-hmm. It can be a little bit difficult for me when I'm on the phone or via email or in person, and people see how young I am, and they're like, oh, okay, like what's your story? How'd you get here? And then why should I trust you? With handling the largest financial transaction of probably their whole entire lives. And so it's been a little bit hard to break into, especially because, all my friend groups are typically of my own age. And, my age is purchasing houses or selling houses. And so, just starting off, it's been slow, but I've learned a lot. I haven't looked back.
So tell me about that first transaction, that first interaction you had with a client.
Yeah, so my first interaction with a client was actually someone who was moving from Colorado to Virginia, and they needed a place to live because they were relocating. And it was actually just a connection through my older brother. And so my older brother, he connected the two of us. And this gentleman, he was also pretty young. And so, he was kind of a part of my generation, and we got along pretty well. And so I think that him being so young and so successful, he kind of saw the same thing in me being so young and hopefully so successful. And so I thought it was a pretty good match. But once again, it wasn't any like friends or family who I was representing.
Okay, that I always call it the friends and family discount when you first starting your own business. Most of your clients are your family and friends, and it's interesting to me that transition to the non-family friend discount. But you're saying right off the bat you were dealing with I don't want to say a real client, but a client that wasn't part of your intimate circle.
Mm-hmm. That's correct. And as time goes on, I plan to keep my real estate license. And so, as time moves forward, more of my family and more of my friends as they come of age will be purchasing real estate. And so, I think right now it's a little bit of a waiting game, like it's kind of like a clock ticking. Mm-hmm. And when, the clock ticks, midnight or noon or whatever, I think I'll be getting a lot more business that way. But in the meantime, it's been, a lot of hustle and bustle in order for me to, try and break out into the industry and meet people who are actually buying and selling homes.
And you said you started in 2019 with your real estate career?
That's correct. I started in late 2019.
Now, were you still in the university, or had you graduated?
I was still I was actually a sophomore in college. So I, always had a passion for real estate. And it was the summer before my sophomore year where, I studied abroad, so I wasn't able to land an internship or an externship. Mm-hmm. And so, let's get into real estate. And so I kind of bought all the materials that fall semester, started studying, and then passed the exam in spring of my sophomore year. And yeah, I always knew I wanted to get into real estate, and so that was the time.
It's so interesting. I mean, I think that's so funny. I mean, funny in that I think when I was a sophomore in college, I worked, down at the mall at a retail operation, because that's what most people, who were 20 years old, that was a job that was available. But you just jumped right in it and took the real estate license.
Yeah, I did. And I think that looking back, the reasons I wanted to get my real estate license were definitely different than most, people trying to become a realtor. I wanted to get it because I knew I always wanted to either do some sort of real estate. And, I really wanted to branch out and do like high level real estate investments, whether that be in, Washington, D.C. or like, Wall Street, New York City, whatever. And my university didn't offer any real estate curriculum. Like there's no organizations you could join. There's no classes that you could take. And so it was always from the very beginning, I wanted to tailor my resume to, these companies who are looking for people to go into the real estate industry in Washington, D.C. and in New York City. And so I thought, what's the best way to tailor my resume than go out, get licensed, and, show them I'm actually passionate and that, I'm competent enough to, pass the exam and do all the necessary jumping through all the hoops to actually get licensed.
Now I'm going to show my age. When you took the exam, did you have to take classes beforehand, and did you do them virtually or did you do them in person?
There's two different ways that you can basically take classes. Okay. One is, in person, and that definitely switched to online during COVID. Mm-hmm. And then you can also, basically just buy the book yourself and then yourself on like a structured timeline to like, study the book and then take the exam. And I just bought the book. It was cheaper to buy the book and just get all like the online materials and just do it myself. Pay someone to teach me, for 2 or 3 weeks.
So you didn't take a class. You just bought the book and did your own study guide.
Yeah, just bought the book, did my own study guide. But also, the platform that I purchased it through, they kind of have like online modules that you can like run through by yourself. Practice quizzes, practice tests, relearning material, vocabulary, that sort of thing. And so that's the route I took. What
surprised you about taking the exam versus real life being a realtor?
First and foremost, I wouldn't say the material was too difficult to study, but it was more so all the legal hoops you had to jump through to like, actually like take the test.
Okay.
Like the scheduling process was definitely quite hectic, and you had to schedule like multiple months out in advance because you couldn't get a room. But in terms of, how does the test compare to like, real life, being a real life realtor or just transactions in general, it was more just from like a broad level kind of, bird's eye perspective of like, what is real estate and, some like the certain like laws and regulations behind it. But, once you pass your exam, that's just kind of like the first stepping stone. And then you've really got to, learn the material and, look at like the residential contract to purchase or, look at, a home inspection addendum. And so, the exam wasn't so much about, a contract to purchase. It was more so just, just very low level vocabulary that you needed to know.
And I've always been curious about this one. Do you have to disclose if your house is haunted?
It depends on the state.
Oh, really?
And so when you want to become a licensed realtor, it's actually mandated by the state. Okay. There's a state portion of the exam and the national portion of the exam. Okay. And so you have to pass both to become, a licensed realtor. But, depending on the state, sometimes you do need to disclose that and sometimes you don't. And so that also goes along with, like homicide, suicides, ghosts in the house, things along those lines. So it depends on the state.
Okay, I've always been curious about that one. That if you had to disclose that, and then do you have to like say if it's a friendly ghost, pissed off ghost? I don't know. Who did you have a mentor or anyone? So you're saying I took the exam, became a realtor. Did you have a mentoring one that said, all right, this is how you read a home inspection report, or these are the things you want to be aware of in a contract, or did you just feel your way along?
I'd say it's a little bit of both. You've definitely got to be doing your own work on your own time, basically, just reading through the written language of, every contract that you're going to send to a client. But also, my company, I was very fortunate where they kind of throw you into not only like a mentorship program, you also have like, 1 day a week or every other week where you would have like, new realtor orientation, and every day you'd be talking about something new. And so, whether that's you being on the buying side, you being on the selling side, talking about, title companies and closing companies versus like commission splits or how to run a comp on a property. So a little bit of both. I, had to do a lot of my on my own time, but I had a mentor, and I also had, like the new education program.
And the new education program, were you the youngest one that was part of that program?
I was, and there wasn't too many agents in the program because, my firm, we probably have just a little bit under 100 agents. Okay. And so at a given time, there's probably only like 4 or 5 people going through like the education program. And so I was certainly the youngest in that program, probably 15, 20, 25 years. And so, definitely quite younger than the rest.
And I mean, that's a significant, 15, 20 years, that's a significant age difference. Did you have anybody make any comments or be surprised by being as young as you are and coming into this industry, the real estate industry?
Yeah, definitely some surprise, and saying like, oh, like, you're also a university student and you're out here, becoming like a licensed realtor and doing all like the necessary education for it. But a lot of times, the majority of realtors I know, that was never their first job. They had one job and another job and another job. And then finally they were like, what, I'm going to give real estate a go, and they become licensed. And so that's the majority of people who I know who are realtors. That's kind of the route they took. And so, always from the very beginning, they're like, man, like, if I could do it all over again, I wish, I was 18, 19, 20 years old and I was in your shoes and I was getting my real estate exam then, and becoming licensed then. And so that's definitely the biggest comment I get. Like, wow, you're doing the right thing.
I've always been intrigued by real estate, also because my mother was a real estate agent and then she later ran a brokerage firm, is that real estate really is a level playing field. It doesn't matter your education level, your age, you can get into the real estate industry and either make a little money or make a lot of money. It's really all up to you. So what did your parents say when you told them you were going to take the real estate exam?
They supported it. My dad, he carried his license for a little bit when he was pretty young as well. Okay. Because he wanted to purchase a property and he wanted to save himself like the 3%, and so also my family has a pretty strong real estate background, and so just growing up, I was always surrounded by rental properties or real estate talk. And so, my family accepted it with open arms, and they were like, wow, like, that's great. I love that you're getting into it. I love that you're passionate about it.
Oh, that's great. Now, you said that you would be able to explain the secondary mortgage market to me.
That's correct.
So let's hear it.
And so, a little bit more about me. I just graduated from James Madison University, which located in Virginia, and got my real estate license while as a university student. Tailor that to like the upper level real estate investment companies, whether that was Washington D.C., New York City, and so I landed an internship, and then I was extended a full-time offer. But the secondary mortgage market is pretty incredible, and it's really just adding liquidity to the primary mortgage market. And so the primary mortgage market is where you, me, or another we want to purchase a home, and so we approach a local banker and we're like, hey, we would like to take a loan on this property, and the local banker, he gives us a loan. Okay. But that banker only has so much liquid cash to lend out to people, and so once he gives 100 or 150 or 200 home loans, well, he doesn't have any more money. And if he doesn't have any more money, well, then you can't approach bankers anymore to buy houses that you want to live in. And so what that banker does is he'll take that piece of paper, that mortgage, that basically, wrote for you, and then he'll sell it to the secondary mortgage market, which is typically just Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac.
Okay.
And they'll take that piece of paper and they'll slice it up into 1,000 different pieces, and then package each piece with another piece of another mortgage, and they'll bundle it up and they'll sell that to investors on the stock market. And so, no matter where you are in the world, China, India, Europe, United States, you can buy the Freddie Mac and the Fannie Mae security, and that's basically buying the interest and principal payments of your everyday Americans. And you can just go on the stock market and you can buy that right now. And what Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac do is not only do they facilitate that process by basically bringing like the principal and interest payments from your average American homeowner all the way to the stock market, but if the homeowner for some reason cannot pay their principal and interest payments, well, Fannie Mae will step in and they'll guarantee that those payments are made on behalf of the investor. And so, once you buy a Fannie Mae or a Freddie Mac, security, you're going to get those interest and principal payments for life.
It's interesting, and I don't think most people any age could understand it, but you seem to have a pretty good grasp of this.
Yeah. I worked for Fannie Mae. I will be working for Fannie Mae, and so that's definitely from day one. You need to have that foundation of, hey, like, this is our business model, and this is what we do, and this is how we serve the American people. So definitely had to get that one down early.
When you mentioned Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, I think back when I was a really little kid and my mother was a real estate agent. I thought they were a couple. Like, I thought they were real people, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and they were married. But that's not the case. I understand that.
That is not the case.
So tell me a little bit about this job. So are you going to stop being a realtor and become a financial analyst, or you said you're still going to hold on to your real estate license? How do you see this moving forward?
I would like to still hold on to my real estate license, just because I don't want to lose it. I don't want to, have to go back through the whole process all again to retrieve it. But I'm licensed in Virginia, and I'll be working in Washington, D.C. Okay. And so just on the other side of the border. And so I'd like to keep my real estate license. And that said, Fannie Mae has hired me as a financial analyst, and so my start date is this coming July.
Exciting.
They throw you in as a financial analyst. You have a 2-year rotational program. And so they have a whole bunch of just different desks that, they service. You have single family loans, you have multifamily loans, you have the capital markets, which is essentially just the trading of bonds. And so I can be placed at, any one of those desks, and there's many desks in each one of those departments. And so I'll serve at each desk for 6 months and rotate 4 times throughout the course of that 2-year rotational program. And then at the end of it, I should be hopefully offered a position in, one of those 4 desks, or I can interview elsewhere in the company for another position.
Now tell me a little bit about what exactly, as a financial analyst, what does that really mean then? What will you be doing?
So that's pretty far ranging, and for me, not working at Fannie yet and not really being a financial analyst yet, doing real work. Although I was an intern and I got, a little bit of perspective of what they do, you can fall into a variety of different categories. But somewhere you're basically going to fall into the process of facilitating the process, from the American homeowner to the primary mortgage market, through the secondary mortgage market, all the way to the investors on the stock market. So you're going to fall somewhere in there. A lot of times, you're going to be servicing maybe multifamily loans or single family loans. Or sometimes you're going to be on the accounting side of the process. And so it really just depends, and it is really far ranging, and I haven't been there yet. And so I can't give you that good of an answer to exactly what I will be doing.
Gotcha. Now, is this, as a financial analyst, is it like being a realtor in that it's commission based?
It is not. It's salary based.
Okay.
With great benefits. And one of the reasons why is Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are actually in conservatorship, which means that we have to report to the federal government. And so the chair of the FHA, the Federal Housing Administration, he oversees a lot of what Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac do. And so working at these two companies, it's kind of like you're in the private industry, but you're kind of in the public industry at the same time. And so, they give some great benefits, but yes, it'll be salary based.
Okay. Now, do you like the fact that being in real estate, it's more commission based and that you have a really unlimited earning potential, or are you more sort of drawn to this idea of having a salary?
I'm drawn to the idea of having a salary and more so having benefits. And so,
okay.
I'm 22, I've still got 4 or 5 years on my parents' health insurance because of Obamacare. But past that, once you're like 27 years old and you get cut off from benefits, that's pretty serious. And so, being a licensed realtor, you're an independent contractor. You don't have an employer. That's right. And so, you have to buy your own benefits. And that can get pretty expensive. And so, I'm drawn to the salary but I'm more so drawn to the benefits. But, also the cool thing about Fannie Mae for the first couple of years I worked there is they don't work you like a dog in the very beginning. You're working, 37 and a half hours a week, 40 hours a week, not doing too much overtime. And, Fannie Mae is consistently in the top companies of the Fortune 500 for, employee satisfaction and, work-life balance. And so I'm really excited that, I'll be able to get the salary and get the benefits, but also be working for a great company with great people and just have a great time all around. But I do, back to real estate, I do like that, what you make is kind of how much you put into it. Mm-hmm. If you put zero effort into it, you're probably gonna make $0. And, if you put a lot of effort into it, you're gonna make a lot more money. I do like that, but I think that the security with Fannie Mae is gonna be, a lot less stressful. Let's say that.
Yeah, definitely. And do you find that people your age are talking about buying houses?
Yes. Yeah. Maybe that's just a representation of my close friend group and mm-hmm. the people I socialize with most. And then also on top of that, I went through the college business. And so everybody's either trying to play the stock market or they're trying to play the real estate market or they're trying to play some other market. And so, if you're not really involved in like the equities, well, you're probably going to be involved in real estate or maybe some other market. So a lot of my friends have talked about purchasing a home. And, there's some great benefits out there that not only does like Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac offer, but also just, local and national banks as a whole. And so, yeah, my friends are talking about purchasing houses, but I still think that the majority of them are still, at least 3 to 4 or 5 years out.
I love the fact that you said most of your friends, you all are in college, you're either playing the stock market or you're talking about buying real estate. I pretty much can promise you that's not what I was talking about when I was 22. But I love that. And I've heard that about the younger generation. And just as you mentioned, thinking more about benefits, thinking more of a like long-term planning.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So what advice would you give someone who, let's say maybe they're a couple years younger than you, and maybe they're just beginning their college career, they're thinking about an entrepreneurial career like you, going into real estate or taking kind of some risks like that? What would your advice be?
My advice for them would to be 100% go for it. Mm-hmm. A lot of times you do not need, actually the majority of the time, you do not need college to get there. And so depending on, how much younger they are in me, I would really steer them away from going to college just because, being an entrepreneur is, a lot about, your failures and then learning from your failures and moving forward. And you're not going to have too many failures in, your first 4 years of college. You're not going to be in the real world. You're not going to be having to make real world decisions. And so, and then also just the phrase entrepreneur, everybody thinks that you've got to make some, some cool invention or something along those lines. I know so many entrepreneurs in my life, and the majority of them, they're either, real estate agents, or they're contractors, they're mechanics, they're plumbers, they work for HVAC. And those are some of the most successful people I've seen in my life are, the people who can actually build things or do things with their hands, like plumbing, HVAC, all those sort of things. So I would say, you don't need college to get there, and 100% go for it.
Well, I love, this is very interesting what you're saying about not going to college, because I have read that also, that Generation Z, the younger generation, are reconsidering college because of the debt that many of you have had. Many of you have had to go into to get a degree. So would you, if you were back to being 18 years old, would you rethink going to college and not go?
I would rethink it.
Really?
I would. I think I would still go to college for a plethora of reasons. But I think that there's too many students or kids in our world that just like society just pushes them towards college. You know, it's like, okay, you graduate high school and now, you know, what university are you going to attend? And I think, you know, just coming from like the 1990s all the way to 2020, I think education is pretty much the same. You know, I don't think that we've had any like crazy improvement in, you know, like our educational strategies. But meanwhile, the price of college and university tuition is from, you know, 1990 is probably up 250, 300%, where the quality of education is very much the same. And so I think that you have to pay so much more dollars today for the same education that you could have gotten all the way back in 1990. And, you know, I think a lot of that reason is just because we have so many admin. You know, you have a president of a university, and then you have like 6 or 7 vice presidents, and each vice president has like 2 or 3 provosts. And then under there, it's just like, you know, it's just so many staff. And I think that that's what makes college expensive. And, you know, the experience is pretty much the same from the 1990s, but you're just paying 3-4 times the price.
That's very insightful of you. It's interesting the way you've laid that out. Have you shared with your parents though that you would have rethought college and not gone to college?
I mean, you know, I'm so far down in the hole that, you know, I haven't really had that conversation with them. Okay. You know, I think that whatever route I took, and my parents were open to me taking any route in my life. And you know, they just wanted me to be passionate about what I did. And I've been passionate about going to school. And, you know, I worked my hardest in school, and I worked my hardest outside of school. And so I haven't had that conversation with my parents, but I'm sure if I had, you know, they'd be open to anything. I think that's great, because I do believe that a lot, as you said, you graduate high school and the expectation is you just go on to college. Now, you brought this up, and I want to ask you that as an entrepreneur, you have to make mistakes. And if you're in college, it's really not the real world to make mistakes. What mistakes have you made in your entrepreneurial career, and what did you learn from those mistakes? I think the biggest mistake that I've made, I can't, you know, pinpoint it to like, you know, one decision I made in my, you know, entrepreneur career. But really, when you're an independent contractor, entrepreneur, working for yourself, you don't have a structure, you know, like no one's going to come out and just give you, hey, this is your 9 to 5, you're working 40 hours a week and you get your weekends off. You know, when you're your own employee, you've got to make your structure, and there's nobody who's holding you to, you know, waking up at 7 a.m. and, you know, working until 6 and then giving you the weekends off. You know, like you've got to make your own hours. And sometimes, you know, it takes a lot. It takes a lot of self-control to work for yourself, because you don't have to be doing anything from 9 to 5, you know, but you know, if you want to make it, you know, you're going to have to be putting in your, you know, 40 to 60 hour weeks. And so you have to have that structured timeline in order for you to be successful. So that you know, what my biggest mistake was, you know, not having that structure early on. And, you know, it's always been a little bit weird for me so far in my life, just because, you know, I'm a university student, and I also kind of, you know, have my entrepreneur hustles on the side, because, you know, college has always been my main focus. You know, now with, you know, I graduated a semester early, and I basically have like 6 months before my start date with Fannie. You know, I've tried to begin getting into that routine, and it's me a lot easier to get into than what I've experienced. You know, I thought it was going to be really easy to wake up at 7 a.m., which it is, but then working for 8 to 9 hours out of the day, and then, you know, calling it quits at like 5 or 6 p.m. just to start over the next day and nobody's holding you to that. That's a lot more difficult than it sounds.
Oh, I would tell you that you know, since I've been self-employed since I was 28, that has been the thing that I've struggled with, because you can let you can let anything take over your entire day. You know.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So, and I'd like to know, how have you figured out how to do that? Like, how have you figured out, okay, so Monday I got up at 7, I worked till 6 or 7, 5 o'clock at night, but I got to do this again tomorrow. How have you figured out how to get yourself to do that?
So I'm still on the pathway to figuring that out.
Okay.
But that said, I do have a good structure. I try and be up at 6:37 every morning, and then be at my desk from 8, and then try and log off at 5 p.m. So really have those strict 8 to 5.
Okay.
For whatever reason I get caught up with something in the week, maybe make up those hours on the weekend. But really, what's really impacted me is work from home. I didn't have an office to begin with because I was just a university student, but I haven't experimented yet with having an office where I can kind of separate my work and life and have a pretty good balance. And so that's actually what I'm looking into now is I'd like to lease out an office so I can wake up, I could do my morning routine, I can leave my house and then have this office. And I feel like once I'm at the office, if I pack my lunch or whatever, I'm gonna be a lot more focused, I'm gonna be a lot more productive. And so I think what's really important is just having your space where you can work, and if you don't have your space, you're gonna lack productivity, and it's not gonna be the best version of yourself.
So you see yourself actually renting an office suite on your own, and then you do you get up, go through the routine of getting your morning routine and going to the office suite to work.
That's correct. And especially, right now my start date's not till July, but when I do start in July, it's still gonna be work from home till at least September. Just for those reasons, I think it's really important. And some people do great. Some people do great in their own homes and they love it. And they can take their lunch break and, run a few quick errands. But for me personally, I think that, separating your house and work and, separating life and work is really important. But yeah, I'm looking into renting an office, for signing a year lease. And, I live in Shenandoah Valley, Harrisonburg, Virginia. And so it's not crazy too expensive to rent an office for a year.
Oh, I think that's very insightful about yourself, that you've figured out that you need that division. Because working for yourself or working from home, it does require more structure than I think other people assume. If people are like, oh, you're working from home, that's great, you're laying in bed working. It's like, no, it's not that easy.
Yeah, it's a lot harder than most people think.
Yeah. All right, I so appreciate your time, but I want to be able to give you your shameless self-plug. If somebody wanted, gosh, I really want to work with Duncan, I want to talk with him, I want to meet with him, hear more about the secondary mortgage market, how would we find you?
I have my own website that if you want to look me up, it's gonna, bring you straight to my real estate website. It's duncanwrutherford.com. Okay. My email address, my number, it's all up on there. So if you just wanted to send me a personal text or a personal email, the information's provided. That said, I'm always looking forward to connecting. I think that your networks is, one of the biggest things that you're going to have in this life. And so it's not what you know, it's who you know. And so that being said, I always love connecting with people. And that said, Meagan, it was great connecting with you today.
Hey, thank you. And Duncan, say your website one more time because you kind of bleeped out there for a second.
It's DuncanWRutherford.com.
Wonderful. DuncanWRutherford.com. That is awesome. Duncan, thank you so much. This has been so much fun talking to the youngest entrepreneur of my series so far. And I hope you have a great day.
You as well, Meagan. Thank you for having me.